The twin suns of Aquilise Prime beat down on the floating platform, making the ocean below shimmer like liquid diamonds. Jake Mitchell wiped the sweat from his forehead and shifted his rifle to a more comfortable position. Peace summits were supposed to be boring assignments, but something about today felt off. All around him, aliens from a dozen different worlds mingled and talked politics. Some had scales, some had fur, and some looked like they were made of living crystal. Jake had been a Marine for 8 years, but he still wasn't used to how weird the galaxy could be. That's when he saw the lion. At first, Jake thought his eyes were playing tricks on him. A full-grown African lion, walking through a crowd of alien diplomats like it belonged there. The big cat wore a collar that sparkled with jewels, and at the end of a thin chain walked Princess Velica of the Valerian Empire. Jake had heard about the princess. Everyone had. She was famous for collecting rare things from across the galaxy. Apparently, Earth animals were the latest trend among rich aliens. The thought made Jake's stomach turn. The lion looked miserable. Its golden fur was dull, and its eyes kept darting around nervously. This wasn't a pet. This was a prisoner wearing fancy jewelry. Jake watched as the princess showed off her prize to other guests. She'd pull on the chain whenever the lion tried to move away. The animal would flinch but obey. A few aliens reached out to touch its mane, treating it like some kind of exotic decoration. The reception dragged on. Waiters floated between guests with trays of strange foods and drinks. Jake's shift was almost over when it happened. The lion had been lying down near the princess's feet, trying to stay out of the way. But something caught its attention. Maybe it was the smell of meat on one of the passing trays, or maybe the animal just wanted to stretch its legs. Either way, the lion stood up and moved toward a nearby table. The chain pulled taut. Princess Velica was talking to an important-looking alien and didn't notice at first. The lion took another step, and the chain yanked hard against the table. Everything seemed to happen in slow motion. The table tilted. Glasses crashed to the floor. A tray of expensive alien delicacies went flying. Purple liquid splashed across the princess's white gown. The entire platform went silent. Princess Velica's face changed colors. Jake had never seen a Valerian angry before. Her crystalline skin went from pale blue to dark red in seconds. She looked down at her ruined dress, then at the lion, then back at her dress. "Useless creature," she hissed. 2 Valerian guards rushed over. The princess said something in her language, sharp and cold. The guards grabbed the lion's collar and started dragging it toward the edge of the platform. Jake's blood ran cold. "Wait, what are they doing?" The soldier next to him, a veteran named Pete, shook his head. "Stay out of it, kid. Diplomatic immunity. Not our business." But Jake was already moving. The guards reached the platform's edge. One of them pressed something on the collar and it fell away. The lion's ears went flat against its head. It knew something bad was coming. "Stop!" Jake shouted, but his voice was lost in the wind. The guards lifted the lion and threw it over the side. For a moment Jake couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. He watched the lion fall 30 feet and hit the water with a massive splash. The animal came up thrashing, trying to keep its head above the waves. But lions weren't made for water. It was already going under. Around him the alien guests turned away. Some looked uncomfortable but none of them moved. Princess Velica smoothed her dress and returned to her conversation like nothing had happened. Jake ran to the edge and looked down. The lion was still fighting but the waves were rough. Its head went under. Came back up. Went under again. "Anyone got a rope?" Jake yelled. "We need to pull it up." Nobody moved. Pete grabbed his arm. "Mitchell, don't be stupid. That's alien property. You can't." Jake shook him off. His hands went to his armor clasps, popping them open one by one. Chest plate hit the deck. Helmet followed. "Jake, you'll lose your career over this." "Then I lose it." Jake kicked off his boots and climbed onto the railing. The water looked dark and angry from up here. The lion was barely visible now, just a patch of golden fur disappearing beneath the waves. Someone behind him was shouting. Maybe his commanding officer. Maybe Princess Velica. Jake didn't care. He jumped. The impact knocked the air from his lungs. Cold water closed over his head and for a second Jake forgot which way was up. Then training kicked in. He broke the surface and looked around frantically. There. 20 feet away. Just a paw visible above the water. Jake swam harder than he'd ever swam in his life. The waves fought him, pushing him back for every foot he gained. His lungs burned. His arms felt like lead. But he kept going. His hand closed on wet fur. The lion thrashed weakly, nearly pulling them both under. Jake wrapped his arm around the animal's massive neck, trying to keep its head up. "I got you," he gasped. Just hold on. Please hold on. The lion's eyes were wide with terror. It didn't understand Jake's words, but maybe it understood his tone. The thrashing slowed. With his free hand, Jake fumbled for the emergency beacon on his belt. The waterproof button clicked, and a bright orange light started flashing. Help would come. They just had to last until then. The minutes felt like hours. Jake's arms screamed in protest. The lion was so heavy and the waves kept trying to separate them. Twice Jake's head went under. Twice he fought his way back up, still holding on. Finally he heard the sound of engines. A rescue boat cut through the water toward them. Strong hands reached down, pulling them both from the ocean. Jake collapsed on the deck, coughing up seawater. Next to him, the lion lay on its side, breathing hard but alive. Their eyes met and Jake saw something there. Recognition maybe. Or gratitude. He reached out and touched the lion's wet mane. "You're okay now," he whispered. "I promise. Nobody's ever going to hurt you again." Above them, on the floating platform, Jake could see aliens gathering at the edge. Princess Velika stood at the front, staring down at them. Even from here, Jake could see the shock on her face. Let her be shocked. Jake had just made the easiest decision of his life. As the rescue boat headed for the medical facility, Jake kept his hand on the lion's side, feeling it breathe. Whatever came next, they'd face it together. The medical bay smelled like antiseptic and wet fur. Jake sat on the floor next to the lion, ignoring the puddle of water spreading around them. A doctor with 6 arms was checking the animal over, making concerned clicking sounds. "Lungs are clear. Heart rate is returning to normal," the doctor said. "He was lucky you got to him when you did. Another minute and we'd be having a very different conversation." Jake nodded, unable to take his eyes off the lion. The big cat was still shaking, its golden fur matted and dark with seawater. Every few seconds it would cough and Jake's heart would clench. The door burst open. Commander Lisa Bradley stormed in, her face red. Behind her came 3 Valerian officials, their crystalline skin glowing with barely contained anger. "Sergeant Mitchell, what the hell were you thinking?" Commander Bradley's voice could have cut steel. Jake stood up slowly, dripping water all over the pristine floor. "With respect, ma'am, I was thinking that I wasn't going to watch an innocent animal drown." "That animal is property of the Valerian Empire," one of the officials said. His voice was cold and sharp. "You had no authority to interfere." "Property?" Jake's hands clenched into fists. "That's a living being, not a piece of furniture." The Valerian stepped forward, his eyes narrowing. "Princess Velika has demanded the immediate return of her possession. You will surrender the creature now." Jake moved, putting himself between the officials and the lion. "No." Commander Bradley closed her eyes and took a deep breath. "Mitchell, stand down." "That's an order." "I can't do that, ma'am." The room went dead silent. Refusing a direct order was career suicide. Jake knew it. Everyone knew it. But as he stood there, he could feel the lion pressing against the back of his legs, still trembling. The choice seemed pretty simple. One of the Valorians pulled out a communication device. "This is a diplomatic incident. We will be filing formal protests with your government." "File whatever you want," Jake said quietly. "I'm not giving him back to someone who threw him in the ocean to die." Commander Bradley looked like she wanted to strangle him. But there was something else in her eyes too. Something that might have been respect. "Everyone out. No. I need to speak with my soldier alone." The Valorians protested, but Bradley's glare could have melted steel. They left, muttering threats about interstellar law and consequences. When the door closed, Bradley sat down on one of the medical beds. She suddenly looked very tired. "Jake, do you have any idea what you've just done? We need those trade routes the Valorians control. Earth needs them. And you just insulted their princess in front of half the galaxy." "I'm sorry, ma'am. But I'd do it again." Bradley was quiet for a long moment. Then she surprised him by smiling. "Just a little. Between you and me? I wanted to punch that princess myself. But we can't always do what we want. We have to think about the bigger picture." "What's going to happen?" "Well, they're going to demand you be arrested. Probably court-martialed. The princess wants you punished and her lion returned." Bradley stood up and walked over to the lion. The big cat watched her warily. "He's beautiful. What a waste, keeping him as a status symbol." An idea was forming in Jake's mind. Crazy. Probably impossible. But maybe. "Ma'am, what if there was a legal way out of this? Something that didn't require giving him back?" Bradley raised an eyebrow. "I'm listening." Over the next hour, Jake and the commander dug through every legal document they could find. Earth law. Interstellar maritime law. Even some obscure cases from the early days of space exploration. Finally they found it. Buried in Section 47 of the Terran Legal Code, the right of salvage. If someone abandons property in international waters, and another person rescues that property from destruction, legal ownership transfers to the rescuer, Jake read aloud. His heart was pounding. Ma'am, she threw him off the platform. Into water that doesn't belong to any nation or planet. She abandoned him. Bradley's eyes widened. And you rescued him. Jake, this might actually work. The hearing was held the next morning in one of the station's conference rooms. Princess Velika sat on one side with her lawyers. Jake sat on the other with Commander Bradley. The lion lay at Jake's feet, refusing to move. A neutral judge, a tall alien with purple skin and too many eyes, reviewed the evidence. Video footage from the platform. Statements from witnesses. The legal precedents Jake had found. Princess Velika's lead lawyer stood up. Your Honor, this is ridiculous. The animal was being disciplined, not abandoned. Princess Velika fully intended to recover her property. After it drowned? Jake couldn't help himself. That was the plan? Sergeant Mitchell, the judge warned. You will have your turn to speak. But the damage was done. Several of the observers in the room were whispering. The video footage was pretty clear. The princess hadn't called for help. Hadn't even looked back after her guards threw the lion over the edge. Commander Bradley presented their case. She was calm, professional, and absolutely devastating. She walked through every legal requirement for the right of salvage, and showed how Jake's actions met each one. The Valerian lawyers argued for 3 hours. They brought up diplomatic immunity, trade agreements, the princess's rights as a member of the royal family. But every time they spoke, people's eyes would drift to the video footage playing on loop. The lion falling. The splash. The struggle. The princess walking away. Finally, the judge held up one hand for silence. I have reached a decision. The room held its breath. The law is clear. Princess Velika disposed of the animal in international waters. She made no attempt at recovery. Under Terran law and applicable interstellar maritime regulations, ownership has transferred to Sergeant Jake Mitchell through the right of salvage. Jake felt like someone had punched him in the chest. He'd won. They'd actually won. Princess Velika stood up so fast her chair fell over. Her face went through half a dozen colors. This is outrageous. I demand. You demand nothing, the judge said firmly. This hearing is concluded. The lion now belongs to Sergeant Mitchell. Any further harassment will result in sanctions. The Valorians stormed out. Princess Velika paused at the door, looking back at the lion one last time. For just a second, something flickered across her face. Shame? Regret? Jake couldn't tell. Then she was gone. Jake looked down at the lion. The big cat looked back up at him with those intelligent amber eyes. Well, Jake said softly, I guess you're mine now. Or I'm yours. However that works. He reached down and scratched behind the lion's ears. The animal leaned into the touch, and Jake felt a rumble start in its chest. A purr deep and powerful. Commander Bradley clapped him on the shoulder. Congratulations, Sergeant. You just adopted a 400-pound cat. What are you going to name him? Jake thought about the princess's lawyers. They'd kept calling the lion Specimen 47. Like it was a science experiment instead of a living creature. Leo, Jake said. His name is Leo. The lion's tail swished once as if in approval. Well, Leo, Commander Bradley said, trying not to smile. Welcome to the Terran Marines. Try not to eat anyone important. As they left the conference room together, Jake couldn't stop grinning. He'd probably ruined his career. Definitely made some powerful enemies. But as Leo walked beside him, staying close, Jake knew he'd made the right choice. Sometimes the right thing and the smart thing weren't the same. Today Jake was okay with that. The cargo bay of the starship Defiant wasn't meant to house a lion. Jake stood in the middle of the empty space, looking at the metal walls and cold floor, and wondered what the hell he'd gotten himself into. Leo sat beside him, looking just as confused. The big cat's ears kept swiveling toward every new sound. The hum of the engines. The hiss of air vents. The distant clang of boots on metal. Everything was wrong for an animal that should have been running across African plains. It's not much, Jake said, scratching Leo's head. But we'll make it work. Making it work cost Jake 3 months of salary. He bought padded mats for the floor so Leo wouldn't slip on the metal. Environmental controls to keep the temperature comfortable. Special lighting that mimicked natural sunlight. A water system. Food storage. By the time he was done, His bank account was empty and the cargo bay looked like a very expensive cat apartment. The crew had mixed feelings about their new passenger. Some people thought Leo was amazing. They'd stop by during their breaks, bringing treats and asking to pet him. Leo tolerated it mostly because Jake was always there. But Jake could tell the big cat was stressed. Too many strangers. Too many new smells. Too much everything. Others thought Leo was dangerous. That thing could kill someone, an engineer named Rodriguez said one day. What happens when it decides you look like lunch? He's not a thing, Jake replied, keeping his voice calm. And his name is Leo. Captain Ryan Torres called Jake to his office on the third day. The captain was a hard man with gray hair and scars that told stories. He'd fought in the border wars and didn't have much patience for drama. Sit down, Mitchell. Jake sat. Leo lay down at his feet, refusing to be separated. Torres looked at the lion for a long moment. I'm getting complaints. People are scared. They say that animal is a liability. Leo hasn't done anything wrong, sir. Not yet. Torres leaned back in his chair. But we're talking about a predator on a military vessel. If something happens, if someone gets hurt, that's on me. And on you. Jake's stomach dropped. Are you ordering me to get rid of him? I should. It would be the smart move. Torres was quiet for a moment. But I saw the video of what that princess did. And I've got a daughter back on Earth who volunteers at an animal shelter. She'd never forgive me if I didn't give your lion a chance. Relief flooded through Jake. Thank you, sir. Don't thank me yet. You've got 30 days. If Leo causes any problems, any at all, he gets transferred to a sanctuary on Earth. Understood. Yes, sir. The first week was rough. Leo paced the cargo bay for hours, his claws clicking on the floor despite the mats. He barely ate. At night, Jake would sleep on the floor next to him, talking in a low voice about nothing important. Just letting Leo hear a friendly sound in all the strangeness. The second week was worse. Leo started having nightmares. The first time it happened, Jake woke up to a roar that shook the entire ship. Leo was on his feet, eyes wild, teeth bared at nothing. Jake had to talk for 20 minutes before the big cat calmed down enough to remember where he was. It happened again at 3 in the morning. Then again 2 days later. Each time half the ship woke up in panic. Each time Jake got more complaints. He remembers, the ship's doctor said. She was a kind woman named Beth who'd started checking on them. The drowning. The trauma. It's going to take time for him to feel safe. How much time? Jake asked tiredly. He hadn't slept properly in days. As long as it takes. But time was something they didn't have. Captain Torres reminded Jake that the 30-day deadline was coming up fast. If Leo didn't settle down soon, he'd be shipped back to Earth. Away from Jake. Away from the only person he trusted. Jake started spending every free moment with Leo. He brought his meals to the cargo bay. Did his paperwork there. Even exercised there, doing push-ups while Leo watched with what might have been amusement. Slowly, gradually, the nightmares became less frequent. Leo started eating better. Started playing with the toys Jake had bought. Then came day 27 and everything changed. Jake was doing maintenance reports when the alarm went off. Not a drill. A real emergency. His communicator crackled to life. All hands to stations. We have Valerian ships requesting permission to board for inspection. Jake's blood ran cold. Valorians. On their ship. He looked at Leo, who'd gone tense at the alarm. It's okay, buddy. Just stay here. I'll be back soon. But Leo had other ideas. When Jake headed for the door, the lion followed. No, Leo. Stay. Leo sat, but his eyes never left Jake. There was something in that gaze. A question maybe. Or a promise. The inspection team arrived an hour later. Jake was part of the security detail greeting them. And at the front of the Valerian group, looking as cold and perfect as ever, was Princess Velika. She'd been assigned as a liaison officer, punishment for the embarrassment at the summit. Jake had heard rumors, but seeing her in person made his hands clench into fists. Velika's eyes found him immediately. Something flickered across her face. Then she looked away and started talking to Captain Torres about inspection procedures. Jake tried to focus on his job. Tried to stay professional. But he couldn't stop thinking about Leo, alone in the cargo bay. What if the inspection went there? What if Velika saw him? The inspection was thorough. The Valorians went through deck by deck, checking everything. Jake stayed with the group, his heart pounding harder with each level they descended. Finally, they reached the cargo level. This area is mostly storage, Captain Torres explained. Nothing of interest. We'll be the judge of that, one of the Valerian officers said. They moved through the corridor. past storage units, past equipment lockers. Getting closer to the converted cargo bay where Leo was waiting, Jake's hand drifted to his sidearm. Not to use it, just to feel something solid. Something real. The Valerian officer reached for the cargo bay door controls. And then they heard it. A roar that echoed through the metal corridors. Powerful. Unmistakable. Princess Velika stopped walking. Her crystalline skin went pale. The door opened. Leo stood in the middle of the bay, his mane seeming to glow under the lights Jake had installed. The lion saw Jake first, and his tail swished once in greeting. Then he saw Velika. The change was instant and terrifying. Leo's ears went flat. His lips pulled back from teeth that could crush bone. Another roar ripped from his throat, and this one wasn't just loud. It was a promise of violence. He didn't charge. Didn't attack. He simply placed himself between Jake and the princess, every muscle tensed, ready. The Valerian guards reached for their weapons. Jake moved without thinking, stepping between them and Leo. Nobody shoots. Everyone stay calm. Call off your animal, a guard demanded. He's not attacking anyone. He's just protecting me. Jake kept his voice low and steady. Leo. Easy boy. It's okay. But Leo wasn't taking his eyes off Velika. The princess stared back, and for the first time since Jake had known her, she looked genuinely shaken. He remembers me, she whispered. Yeah, Jake said. Animals don't forget. The moment stretched out. Leo growled low in his chest. Velika took a step back. Then another. I've seen enough of this section, she said, her voice tight. We'll continue elsewhere. The inspection team left quickly. Jake heard them in the corridor talking in sharp, quick bursts. When their footsteps faded, he finally allowed himself to breathe. Leo was still tense, staring at the door where Velika had been. Jake knelt down and wrapped his arms around the lion's neck. I know, buddy. I know. She can't hurt you anymore. I won't let her. That night, Leo slept without nightmares for the first time. He curled up next to Jake, one massive paw resting on Jake's chest, and actually relaxed. The next morning, Captain Torres called Jake to his office again. Jake expected the worst. Expected to be told that Leo had to go, that the princess had filed complaints, that it was over. Instead, Torres was almost smiling. That was quite a display yesterday. Sir, I can explain? Torres held up a hand. Princess Velika sent a message this morning. She's withdrawing any future claims to the lion. Says she has no desire to interact with him again. Reading between the lines, I think your Leo scared her pretty badly. Jake couldn't believe it. So he can stay? He can stay. But Mitchell? Get that animal some proper training. If he's going to live on a military ship, he needs to know how to behave around personnel. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. As Jake left the office, Leo waiting in the hallway, he felt like he could finally relax. They'd made it through the hard part. The adjustment period was over. Now they could start actually living. Leo bumped his head against Jake's leg and Jake laughed. Come on, you big goof. Let's go get you some breakfast. They had a home now. Strange as it was, they had a home. 6 months passed like a dream. Leo became part of the ship's routine. The crew got used to seeing him patrol the corridors with Jake. Some of the younger soldiers started bringing him treats. Even Captain Torres would stop to scratch behind Leo's ears when he thought nobody was watching. Jake had never been happier. Every morning he'd wake up to Leo's warm weight pressed against his side. Every night, they'd walk through the cargo bay together while Jake talked about his day. It was simple. It was perfect. Then the Krell came. The attack happened during the night shift. Jake was in the cargo bay with Leo, going through supply reports. The alarm started screaming without warning. Red lights flooded the corridors. All hands to battle stations. We are under attack. Repeat, we are under attack. Jake's training kicked in immediately. He grabbed his rifle and combat gear from the locker. Leo was on his feet, sensing the danger, his body tense. Stay here, Jake ordered, hitting the lock on the cargo bay door. I'll be back. I promise. Leo growled, but Jake was already running. The corridors were chaos. Soldiers rushing to their positions. Officers shouting orders. Somewhere in the distance, Jake heard the scream of tearing metal. The Krell had breached the hull. Jake reached his squad's assembly point in the lower decks. His team leader, a tough woman named Rodriguez, was already there with half the squad. What's the situation? Jake asked, checking his weapon. Krell boarding party. At least 20 hostiles. They hit us from 2 sides. Rodriguez's face was grim. These aren't pirates looking for cargo. This is a kill mission. Jake had heard stories about the Krell. 8 feet tall, covered in scales thick enough to stop most bullets. They had claws that could rip through body armor. Worst of all, they loved to fight. To them, boarding actions were basically a sport. The first Krell came around the corner like a nightmare made real. Its scales were dark green, almost black. Its eyes glowed yellow in the emergency lighting. When it saw the humans, it opened its mouth and hissed, showing rows of needle-sharp teeth. Fire! Rodriguez screamed. The corridor lit up with gunfire. Jake squeezed his trigger, aiming for the spots between the Krell's armor plates. The creature staggered but kept coming. It took 15 shots before it finally went down. Then 5 more appeared behind it. The battle became a blur. Jake fired until his rifle overheated. Switched to his sidearm. Kept firing. The Krell were brutal and relentless. Every time they dropped one, 2 more seemed to take its place. Fall back, Rodriguez ordered. We can't hold this position. They retreated down the corridor, firing as they went. Jake's squad was down to 6 people now. He'd seen Thompson get grabbed by a Krell and thrown against the wall. Seen Chin go down fighting 3 at once. The odds were getting worse by the second. They reached an intersection and tried to set up a defensive position. But the Krell weren't giving them time. They pressed forward, using their size and strength to push the humans back. Jake was reloading when he heard it. A sound that didn't belong in a spaceship battle. A roar that made his heart stop. Leo. The lion came around the corner like a golden missile. 400 pounds of pure muscle and fury. He hit the lead Krell so hard that both of them crashed into the wall. Leo, no. Jake screamed, but it was too late. The Krell tried to grab Leo with its claws. The lion was faster. His jaws closed on the creature's throat, and even through armor plating, the bite was devastating. The Krell went down thrashing. Another Krell turned toward Leo, raising its claws. Jake fired 3 shots into its back. The creature stumbled, and Leo was on it immediately. Claws that had evolved to take down zebras and buffalo worked just fine on alien warriors. The other Krell hesitated. Jake could see it in their body language. They'd never faced anything like Leo before. Their own planets had predators, sure, but nothing like an Earth lion. Nothing that combined speed, power, and intelligence in quite the same way. Leo stood between the humans and the Krell, blood on his mane, teeth bared. He roared again, and the sound echoed through the metal corridors like thunder. One of the Krell took a step back. Then another. Push forward, Rodriguez ordered. Don't give them time to think. The squad rallied, fighting alongside Leo. The lion moved like he'd been born for combat. He'd knock a Krell off balance, giving the humans a clear shot. He'd grab another by the leg, dragging it down where Rodriguez could finish it. They worked together without planning, without practice, just pure instinct and trust. Jake fought next to Leo, covering the lion's blind spots. When a Krell tried to stab Leo from behind, Jake put 3 rounds through its shoulder. When another grabbed Jake's leg, Leo's jaws closed on its arm, making it let go. The battle raged for what felt like hours but was probably only minutes. Jake lost track of how many Krell went down. Lost track of everything except the fight. Finally, mercifully, it was over. The last Krell retreated, dragging their wounded with them. Reinforcements from other parts of the ship arrived, securing the area. Jake collapsed against the wall, breathing hard. His hands were shaking from adrenaline. Around him, the corridor looked like a war zone. Scorch marks on the walls. Emergency lights flickering. And bodies. Too many bodies. Leo limped over and pressed against Jake's side. The lion was bleeding from a dozen cuts. Nothing life-threatening, but enough to show how hard he'd fought. "You crazy cat," Jake whispered, wrapping his arms around Leo's neck. "You broke through 3 locked doors, didn't you? Couldn't just stay safe like I told you." Leo rumbled deep in his chest. Not quite a purr. More like a statement. "I go where you go." Rodriguez walked over, her armor dented and scorched. She looked at Leo with new respect in her eyes. "That animal saved our lives. We were done. They had us pinned." She reached out slowly, letting Leo sniff her hand, then scratched behind his ear. "Thank you, Leo." The medical teams arrived, checking everyone over. A doctor tried to sedate Leo to treat his wounds, but the lion wouldn't leave Jake's side. Finally, they just treated him awake, with Jake holding his head and talking him through it. Captain Torres came down to survey the damage. He looked at the fallen Krell, at the exhausted soldiers, at Leo lying protectively next to Jake. "I want a full report," Torres said. Then he looked directly at Leo. "And I want this lion given an official position in the Terran Marines. If he's going to fight for us, he deserves recognition." Jake couldn't believe what he was hearing. "Sir? You heard me, Mitchell. File the paperwork." Corporal Leo has earned his stripes. News of the battle spread through the fleet faster than light speed. Other ships wanted to know about the human soldier and his lion who'd fought off a Krell boarding party. Some people thought it was propaganda. Others called it a miracle. Jake didn't care what they called it. He just knew that Leo had risked everything to save him. Had broken through barriers and crossed a battlefield because Jake was in danger. That night, as they lay in the cargo bay recovering, Jake couldn't stop looking at Leo. The lion had fresh bandages covering his wounds. He should have been resting. Instead, he kept one eye open watching the door. Still protecting Jake even in sleep. "I don't deserve you, buddy," Jake whispered. "But I'm glad you're here." Leo's tail swished once and his eye closed. For the first time since the battle, the lion allowed himself to truly rest. The next morning, Jake found a new uniform patch on his bunk. It showed a golden lion on a blue background, with the words Guardian Unit underneath. Captain Torres had approved the design overnight. When Jake showed it to Leo, the big cat sniffed it once and sneezed, which made Jake laugh. The first real laugh since the battle. They'd fought together. Bled together. Survived together. And now everyone in the galaxy would know. Mess with Jake Mitchell and you'd have to deal with his lion too. The Krell had learned that lesson the hard way. Jake hoped nobody else would be stupid enough to test it. But if they did, he and Leo would be ready. Always together. Always fighting. Always home. A year had passed since the Krell attack. Jake's life had changed in ways he never could have imagined. Leo wasn't just his pet anymore. The lion was officially Corporal Leo of the Terran Marines, with his own service record and everything. Other ships requested visits just to meet the famous lion who'd helped save the Defiant. But the strangest change came in a message that arrived on a quiet Tuesday morning. Jake was in the cargo bay helping Leo through his morning exercises. The big cat had to stay in shape, and honestly, Jake enjoyed their routine. It was peaceful. Normal. Everything a soldier's life usually wasn't. His communicator buzzed. Captain Torres wanted to see him immediately. "Stay here, buddy. I'll be right back." Leo huffed but settled down with his favorite toy, a reinforced ball that had survived 6 months of abuse. In the captain's office, Torres looked uncomfortable. That was never a good sign. "Mitchell, I've received a formal request from the Valerian Empire. They want you and Leo to visit their homeworld." Jake's stomach dropped. Why would they want that? Apparently, Princess Velika has become some kind of animal rights activist. She's been pushing for laws to protect animals, opening shelters, the whole thing. Now she wants to meet Leo again as part of her public campaign. Absolutely not. Jake's voice was flat. She threw him in the ocean. She doesn't get to use him for good publicity now. Torres nodded slowly. "I figured you'd say that. But there's more. The Valerian government is offering significant trade concessions if we cooperate. And Velika has personally guaranteed Leo's safety. Multiple times. In writing. I don't care what she guarantees. I'm not ordering you to go, Jake. But I am asking you to think about it. This could help a lot of animals on the Valerian worlds. Real change. Real protection for creatures that have none right now." Jake left the office feeling sick. He didn't want to see Velika again. Didn't want Leo anywhere near her. But that night, lying in the cargo bay with Leo's head on his chest, he couldn't stop thinking about Torres's words. Real change. Real protection. How many other animals were being treated like Leo had been? How many were suffering right now because people like Velika saw them as objects instead of living beings? "What do you think, Leo?" Jake scratched behind the lion's ears. "Should we give her a chance?" Leo rumbled, which wasn't exactly an answer. 3 weeks later, Jake and Leo stood on the landing platform of Valor Prime, the Valerian homeworld. The planet was beautiful in an alien way. Crystal spires reached toward a purple sky. Gardens stretched in every direction. But Jake barely noticed. He was too busy watching Leo, making sure the big cat was comfortable. Leo seemed calm, but Jake could feel the tension in the lion's body. They were both on guard. Princess Velika appeared from one of the gardens. She looked different than Jake remembered. Less cold. More uncertain. She walked slowly, keeping her distance. "Thank you for coming," she said. Her voice was quiet. "I wasn't sure you would. We almost didn't." Jake kept his hand on Leo's mane. "Captain Torres said you wanted to meet Leo. So here we are. But if this is some kind of publicity stunt..." "It's not." Velika interrupted, then seemed to catch herself. "I'm sorry. I need to say something. To both of you." She took a breath and looked directly at Leo. The lion watched her with those amber eyes, his tail swishing slowly. "I was wrong," Velika said. I treated you like a possession. Like something to show off at parties. When you embarrassed me, I tried to kill you. There's no excuse for that. No justification. I was cruel and selfish, and I'm sorry. Jake wasn't sure what he'd expected, but it wasn't this. Velika's voice was shaking. Her crystalline skin was shifting colors with emotion. After you saved him, she continued, looking at Jake now, I was angry, humiliated. But then I saw the videos. I saw how he looked at you compared to how he looked at me. The difference was obvious. He was terrified of me. But with you he was happy. Safe. She paused, her hands clenching. It made me realize how many things I'd been wrong about. Not just about animals. About everything. So I started researching. Learning. Talking to experts from Earth and other worlds. And the more I learned, the more ashamed I became. Velika gestured toward the gardens. I've spent the last year trying to make things right. We've opened 12 shelters across the Valerian Empire. Passed laws against animal cruelty. Started education programs. But I needed you to know that it started because of Leo. Because he survived. Because you saved him. Jake didn't know what to say. This wasn't the cold princess who'd thrown Leo off that platform. This was someone different. Someone who'd actually changed. Why tell us this? Jake asked finally. Because I want young Valorians to see Leo. To hear his story. To understand that animals aren't objects. Velika's voice grew stronger. But more than that, I wanted Leo to know that he mattered. That what happened to him led to something good. Does that sound foolish? He's a lion, Jake said. He doesn't understand politics. Maybe not. But he understands kindness. And cruelty. I saw that the day he faced me on your ship. Velika took a small step forward. May I come closer? Not to touch him. Just to show that I'm no longer a threat. Jake looked at Leo. The lion was tense but not aggressive. Okay. But slowly. Velika approached like she was walking on ice. 5 feet away. 4 feet. 3. Leo's ears were forward, watching her every move. When she was about 6 feet away, she stopped and slowly sat down on the grass. Hello, Leo, she said softly. I know you remember me. I know you have every reason to hate me. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. You deserved better. Every animal deserves better. They sat like that for a long moment. Velika on the grass. Leo watching her. Jake ready to intervene if needed. Then Leo did something that surprised everyone. He stood up and walked toward Velika. Not quickly. Not aggressively. Just curious. He stopped a few feet away and sniffed the air. Velika didn't move. Barely breathed. Leo took another step. Then one more. And then he did the most unexpected thing. He bumped his head against her shoulder. Just once. Gentle. Velika's eyes filled with tears. Thank you, she whispered. Leo returned to Jake's side immediately, pressing against his leg. The message was clear. I don't hate you, but this is my human. This is where I belong. Over the next few days, Jake and Leo visited the shelters Velika had opened. They were impressive. Clean, spacious, staffed with people who actually cared about the animals. Jake met creatures from a dozen different worlds, all rescued from abuse or abandonment. One shelter had a section just for Earth animals. Dogs, cats, even a pair of horses. All of them had been exotic pets like Leo, kept in terrible conditions until Velika's new laws allowed them to be rescued. This is because of you, Velika said as they watched a young Valerian girl gently pet a golden retriever. All of this. You showed me that protecting the helpless isn't weakness. It's strength. On their last day, Velika held a public ceremony. Thousands of Valorians came to see Leo. Jake was nervous about the crowd, but Leo handled it like a professional. He sat calmly while Velika talked about animal welfare, about compassion, about learning from mistakes. This lion could have died, Velika told the crowd. I tried to kill him because he inconvenienced me. But a human soldier named Jake Mitchell showed me something I'd never understood. That every life has value. That protecting those who cannot protect themselves is the highest calling. The crowd was silent, listening to every word. Leo survived. And because he survived, because Jake saved him, thousands of other animals have been saved too. Laws have changed. Hearts have changed. I have changed. Velika looked at Jake and Leo. Thank you for giving me the chance to become better. As they prepared to leave Valor Prime, Velika came to say goodbye privately. She kept her distance from Leo, respectful of his space. Will you come back? She asked. Perhaps in a year? I'd like to show you the progress we've made. Jake looked at Leo, then back at Velika. Maybe. If Leo's okay with it. That's all I can ask. Velika smiled and it looked genuine. Safe travels, Corporal Leo. And thank you, Sergeant Mitchell. For everything. On the flight back to the Defiant, Jake sat with Leo in the cargo hold of the transport ship. The Lion was tired but content, his head resting on Jake's lap. You know what, buddy? Jake said, scratching behind Leo's ears. I think we actually made a difference. Not just by fighting Krell or saving the ship, but by showing people that compassion matters. That standing up for what's right, even when it's hard, can change things. Leo's tail swished lazily. Plus, you got to be famous. Don't let it go to your head. When they arrived back at the Defiant, half the crew was waiting at the airlock to welcome them home. Captain Torres was there too, trying not to smile. Welcome back, Corporal, Torres said, giving Leo a proper salute. The ship wasn't the same without you. That night, back in their cargo bay, Jake and Leo settled into their normal routine. It felt good to be home. The adventure had been important, but this was where they belonged. Together on the Defiant, protecting their crew, living their strange but perfect life. Jake pulled out his tablet and started writing an email to his sister back on Earth. She'd been asking for updates on Leo for months. You won't believe where we just were, he typed. Your big brother and his lion just changed an empire. Not bad for a kid from Colorado and a cat from Africa, right? Leo snored softly, already asleep. Jake smiled and kept writing. They had more adventures ahead. More challenges to face. But whatever came next, they'd handle it the same way they handled everything. Together.